The game of Pokemon is all about making your opponent's team of 6 faint before they can do the same to you. Thus, you really don't want your Pokemon to faint if you can't help it. Sure, sometimes you have no choice, as you won't be able to prevent an opposing threat from claiming a KO. Sometimes though, losing a Pokemon doesn't have to be bad. Sacrificing something can even lead you to a better position that can even win you the game. For instance, if you let a less useful teammate go against Latios' Draco Meteor, you can then safely take advantage of its half special attack to set up with a game-ending threat like Swords Dance Lucario. So what does the logical endpoint of sacrificing a Pokemon for the benefit of your overall game state look like? It's not just sacrificing your Pokemon against attacks you can't switch into. No, it is actively sacrificing your own Pokemon with moves specifically designed to do so. As antithetical to the progress as it may seem to click moves that will make your own Pokemon faint, we are discussing a certain subset of these moves today because they are potentially incredible, absolutely game-changing, and quite frankly, they better be. After all, you are sacrificing the user. There are many different ways one can sacrifice their own Pokemon, and we're going to dive into a specific type of them today: Lunar Dance and Healing Wish. We already covered Explosion in another video, so go check that out if you haven't already. But now, without further ado, here is the incredible power of self-KO moves. A player who built a pioneering Gen 4 Lunar Dance Cresselia team described using Lunar Dance as breaking the rules and playing with 7 Pokemon on your team. Depending on how Healing Wish and Lunar Dance are used, it can certainly feel this way. One can use something like Jirachi or Shaman that is going to provide useful utility throughout the course of a game, and then when they're near the end of their rope and about to faint, they provide incredible value beyond anything else their move pools could offer, which is being able to completely heal up one of your other Pokemon. Rather than just letting your Healing Wish or faint for what would likely be very little, a bit of damage, yeah sure, but not a huge deal. Instead, you get to bring another Pokemon whose function has been impaired through the wear and tear of a battle back into excellent condition late in the battle. It's almost like Revival Blessing before Revival Blessing was even a thing. We're just lucky those moves are on Pokemon like Pawmot and Rapska. Having such a fresh threat in such endgame scenarios where most everything else is battered and worn down is an incredible advantage, and does really feel like you've gained a 7th Pokemon. This is how Cresselia was used initially when its Lunar Dancing talents were first discovered in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. It'd come in early in the game, check a threat with its massive defenses, set up dual screens for the benefit of its sweeping teammates, then switch out. It would then come back in later in the game and do it again, except this time, it also revived a weakened sweeper with Lunar Dance, especially because Cresselia was deceptively fast and thus able to pull its moves off against quite a healthy variety of opponents. Once it had done that, the opponent was in for a world of pain they were unlikely to withstand. Surviving the likes of healthy Dragon Dance Tyranitar under screens was bad enough the first time around, but twice? And it's backed by other sweepers like Lucario? Forget it. There are plenty of bulky dual screen users who could set up screens multiple times, but when they fainted, they would only leave the screens behind. When Cress fainted, it would bring a powerful sweeper in and in perfect condition, undoing any previous damage or status sustained while weakening the opponent. Generally, it's fine to take some big damage from a sweeper as scary as Dragon Dance Tyranitar, as long as you're dealing with it in return, but therein lies the power of Lunar Dance and Healing Wish, that they nullify such efforts. You don't have to go to the length of effectively gaining a 7th Pokemon for Healing Wish and Lunar Dance to be excellent either. You have a Pokemon that's so insanely threatening that all your opponent can do is not completely collapse against it. Well, generally they survive the assault, but it's by the skin of their teeth, yet that is generally sufficient to stave off the assault. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could use such a threat twice? Well, here you go. And in these cases, you often don't even have to preserve the Healing Wisher until late. Such cases pretty much have the Healing Wisher on a team almost solely to click Healing Wish. Yeah, sure, they can ostensibly do other things, but most of the time they're just pretending to look busy until they can sacrifice themselves. This isn't gaining a 7th Pokemon, but instead practically replacing your 6th slot with a second version of your biggest threat. What did this look like in practice? Well, in ORAS, Mega Metagross was an incredible threat. Teams would often just barely survive its gargantuan power, excellent speed, and even superb natural bulk that let it survive a Scarf Landorus Therian Earthquake at full health. Utterly nuts for such a strong, super effective hit. Mega Metagross would get right into the action, and the only thing that stopped it from blasting through everything was the chip damage it couldn't avoid sustaining. Many a team basically made the bargain that if it was going to take their Pokemon down, they'd take Mega Metagross with with them by abusing its reliance on contact moves, punishing it with Ferrothorn's iron barbs and various rocky helmets, especially those attached to rough-skinned Garchomp. On the other hand, Latias was nearly useless in Oras. All it did was spend one turn not dying to Keldeo or Mega Charizard Y, especially the metagame strangling Keldeo, and then getting trapped by Tyranitar or generally not threatening anything. However, Latias had Healing Wish, thus an incredible combination was born. Mega Metagross would blast through the opposition with reckless abandon, not caring for the chip damage it would sustain in the process because it leaves so much carnage in its wake. And the downside, that it'd be too weak to finish the game off, was now removed because it had Latias on its side. Latias existed alongside Mega Metagross almost solely to give Mega Metagross its second win. You switch into Keldeo once, maybe twice, you usually ran Cobra Berry to escape pursuit once, you could defog to help against hazards, you had Thunder Wave because it was good, you had Ice Beam so ground types couldn't block your T-Wave. That was all well and good, but this was all in the service of optimizing the field for when Latias performed its duty of sacrificing it to bring Mega Metagross back for a fresh round of terror that would almost certainly be the coup de grace. A healthy Mega Metagross late in the game was borderline unfair, as it had an even easier time picking off the bludgeon remains of the opponent's team, and revenge killing it wouldn't work nearly as well with all that important chip damage neutralized. This level of threat absolutely justified dedicating a team slot to a Pokemon whose entire purpose would be to sacrifice itself. Anything to use two Mega Metas. Now, as threatening as Mega Meta was, it wasn't the only major danger worth Healing Wishing for. Certain boosting threats were similarly fierce, and often came up short. Once again, prime candidates to revitalize for round 2. Think threats like Volcarona, Manaphy, Suicune, Superior. Manaphy in particular was so consistently insane at tearing through the opposition after boost that certain teams were built with 2 Healing Wish users. Having to fight 3 Manaphy felt downright unfair. It's a tall ask, building around a Pokemon who has 2 teammates sacrificing itself just to give it another shot, but Manaphy's nigh peerless threat level after a boost made such efforts worthwhile. However, on the subject of Suicune and Superior, that brings us back to Cresselia and Lunar Dance. Was there any difference between it and Healing Wish, or was it just Healing Wish dressed up with the cooler animation for Cresselia? Was the choice between Cresselia and Healing Wishers dependent on whose defensive profile you wanted for your team? The answer to those questions are no and no. There is one major difference between Healing Wish and Lunar Dance, and that is power points, or PP. When Healing Wish heals a Pokemon, it simply brings it back to full health and removes any status condition. It won't restore any PP at all. Think of it like a full restore. When Lunar Dance heals a Pokemon though, it restores all its PP back to full as well. Thus, if you got a threat that regularly runs low on PP through the execution of its strategy, Cresselia is your restoration Pokemon of choice. Substitute Protect Calm Mind Suicune is one of the most infuriatingly unstoppable sweepers in the game when it gets going, but the fact that it needs to spam sub and protect as much as it does, as well as Scald's potentially getting run out by bulkier teams even at +6, means that as much havoc as it leaves behind, it might not quite finish the job before running out of PP. However, with Lunar Dance in reserve, this isn't an issue, and Cresselia will enable Suicune to come back for round 2, finishing the job with ease against the team that could barely withstand it the first time, facing 2 sub-protect Suicune. Yeah, it's every bit as nightmarish as it sounds. In a similar vein, Superior is utterly terrifying, but can sometimes run out of its mere 8 Leaf Storms. Yet you needn't fear it because Cresselia is here to allow it to unleash even more. This strategy is generally seen on Hyper Offense, but certain Diamond and Pearl stall teams have even used Lunar Dance Cresselia. While it sounds backwards to sacrifice a Pokemon on such slow-paced teams who aren't bombarding the opponent with game-breaking sweepers, Cresselia isn't aiming to sacrifice itself immediately. It merely acts as a wall throughout much of the game. Now you might think, Lunar Dance seems nice for when Cresselia is at low health and you want to revive a wall. Sure, but that's not its main appeal. Otherwise, such teams would just use Healing Wish Latias instead. Lunar Dance Cresselia Stall provides an excellent weapon against other such teams. Stall mirrors often see Clefable spamming Seismic Toss and Soft Boiled at each other after knocking off each other's leftovers, because almost nothing else on such passive teams wants to take Clefable on and get ruined by knockoff. Thus, the Clefables essentially trade themselves for each other, and by the end of the exchange, they are running low on PP. Well, what if you could restore Clefable's PP? You'd have an amazing advantage against other Stall, that's what. With Withstanding Clefable's passive damage immune knockoff assault a second time with a stall team, one without a Clefable of their own at this point, was nigh impossible. Of course, game situations differ, and not every Cresselia Lunar Dance is going to be targeted at something low on PP. Hyper offense teams like those spamming Storm Superior or Sub Suicune also run Volcarona, and sometimes you'll want to heal up Volcarona, which is almost never running low on PP. However, Lunar Dance's unique traits are extraordinary, and why we chose to have Cresselia in the thumbnail. Healing Wish is superb in general, and its users have quite a bit of range. Scarf Healing Wish has been seen on the likes of Latias, Jirachi, and Shaman, while certain bulky offense teams highly enjoy the move used by Clefable or Chansey as well. We must also mention Healing Wish's unique mechanics across the generations. In its debut Gen 4, when Healing Wish is used, the turn does not end before the recipient comes in. What this means is that if you Healing Wish first, the Pokemon coming in to receive the Healing Wish will be vulnerable to your opponent's attack. This isn't the case in any other generation. In other gens, if your Latias Healing Wishes to Infernate, the opponent will make their move, an attack failing of course, seeing as Latias has just fainted, but other moves like Hazards or Healing or Substitute going off, and then the turn will end. Only then will Infernate come in. However, in Gen 4, if Latias' Healing Wishes to Infernate against a Heatran, it will get hit by the Dragon Pulse that Heatran had aimed at Latias. Another Gen 4 mechanic is that Hazards are taken before the Healing Wish goes off. This means if your Pokemon faints to Hazards, it can't be Healing Wished. It'll just faint, and the next Pokemon coming in will receive the Healing Wish. Hilariously, this means up to 3 Pokemon can potentially faint on a single turn. The Healing Wish user sacrifices itself, the incoming Pokemon goes down to Hazards, and the third Pokemon has to take an attack, which might as well KO it. This actually happened in this DPP Ubers tournament game once, where one of the players didn't know DPP Healing Wish mechanics, as you can see here, lost 3 Pokemon in a turn to end the game. Technically, if multiple Pokemon are sacrificed to Hazards, it could be more than 3, but you'd almost always make this move only because you didn't know the mechanic, so you wouldn't send in another Pokemon KO'd by Hazards. Anyway, being unable to Healing Wish Pokemon in Hazard KO range is unfortunate, but the plus side is that since the Hazards go off before the Healing Wish, the Healing Wish Pokemon will go back to 100%, which can be massive. One might be able to Healing Wish a Pokemon at 1% in Gens 5 and on, but it'll still be dug into by Hazards. In Generation 5, Healing Wish took on the shape that is more known and user-friendly, where the recipient comes in after the turn has ended and thus doesn't risk anything, as well as the Hazard interaction we just described. It remained in that form until Generation 8, where it received an excellent new buff. Previously, if you used Healing Wish and switched to a fully healthy Pokemon, the Healing Wish would do nothing and be wasted. Now though, if you Healing Wish and switch to a healthy Pokemon, the Healing Wish will be saved. What this means in effect is that if you've got a Healing Wish user that's not doing much and just waiting to sacrifice itself, as it tends to be the case with many of them, you no longer have to keep it around as dead weight until the time comes to try and get it in so it can use the move for a certain teammate that now needs it, and not before. This can be an awkward position, but no more. Now you can be more aggressive and proactive with your Healing Wish. Sacrifice the Pokemon early and save the Healing Wish for later, as its effects will not go off until a Pokemon switches in that status and or at less than full health. This does not mean that Healing Wish goes off as soon as a Pokemon switching in takes damage. It means it goes off as soon as a Pokemon switches in and is already at less than 100%. For instance, if Jirachi uses Healing Wish and Garchomp switches in at full health, the Healing Wish is stored. If it winds up taking damage from Corviknight's Rocky Helmet and U-turn before being made to switch out against the opposing Dragapult, the Healing Wish does not go off there, nor does it go off when its teammate Tapu Fini switches in and takes damage from Shadow Ball. Now, if Garchomp switched in again afterwards, the Healing Wish would go off, since it was coming in at less than 100%. And if Tapu Fini switched to something else that came in at 100%, then Tapu Fini was the one to come back in at less than 100%, and it would be the one to receive the Healing Wish instead. As you can see, the possibilities for such immediate use and delayed application of the move are absolutely incredible, as seen in this tournament final game, which demonstrates this admittingly confusing mechanic in action. The Healing Wish is used preemptively on turn 3, but doesn't activate until turn 19 despite plenty of damage being taken in the meantime. Its potential uses were numerous and highly valuable. So in conclusion, it must be said, as great as Cresselia's defensive capabilities are, it would be far more meager without Lunar Dance. Yes, it's a nice wall and everything, but it is the definition of a passive bulky Pokemon, a textbook example of the type that gets taken advantage of 1,000 different different ways. With Lunar Dance though, Cresselia is able to find excellent viability at the highest level of play on a much wider variety of teams. It's not just the healing wish factor, it's the specificity of a healing wish that also restores PP. Cresselia can try to find non-Lunar Dance utility so it can do things when it hits the field besides instantly sacrifice itself. Gen 6 saw it take a liking to tricking away a Choice Scarf, for example, which ruins bulkier answers like Ferrothor, and against faster offensive teams, Cresselia's nice speed means it can pull a Lunar Dance off in front of just about anything. However, when it comes down to it, Lunar Dance is one of the most game-breaking moves around. This isn't to minimize just how many niches have been fueled by Healing Wish either. Latias in particular thrived in metagames where it was almost fully outclassed by Latios simply because it could Healing Wish to a teammate. For a time, Healing Wish made Jirachi the best Scarfer in Gen 5 OU. It wasn't enough that it U-turn and Ironhead and Ice Punch. No, it had to directly make its teammates more threatening too. Hatterene, Gardevoir, even the bulky Alomomola made stupendous use of Healing Wish. It's a highly specific way of playing the game, but it is the epitome of high risk, high reward. If done right, the move can vault Pokemon to rarefied heights. It's a move so effective, so overflowing with utility, it elevates Pokemon far past the viability they would have otherwise. Even a rarer user of the move like Clefable is better for having access to it. For the ultimate example though, look no further than how Lunar Dance has single-handedly made Cresselia a top-level tournament force. Thanks for watching everyone, and thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos, and thank you to everyone else watching as well. And thank you so much to our Platinum tier patrons. Thank you so much to Raven Daytona Ring, Sorazan Croxon, Stoneface Colin, Bingleton, Ray, Daniel Isbeast, Glitcherton, Alex Sabo, Funky, Skylaria, and Jack G for their support of our videos. And follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.